Hello and welcome back to another tutorial on jsPsych. Today we are going to turn our web application into a node.js format. So a node.js format is an open source server environment which allows you to have backend coding so you can communicate with backend and the front end. So far, all that we have done is on the front end. So the browser-based application. So when we want to deploy our experiment online, we might want to save our data in a database or maybe in Dropbox. So you have to connect to these resources. And doing that, we might need some secret key or access key to connect to these applications or resources. So this has to be done in the backend. So people on the front end or the client side will not be able to retrieve your information. So let's move some stuff around to make things more neat. I'm going to move the jsPsych init into my experiment and call it a function. Start experiment. So right now we have the CSV. I'm going to turn it off and change the display data. So the first thing we have to do is to download node.js and npm, which is an package manager for node.js, because we're going to use some packages in the next tutorial and also in this tutorial to manage our application. So right now I'm going to call it application because it's going to be a web app rather than an experiment. So you can download this based on your OS. So you can pause this and install Node.js. After you've installed the Node.js and npm, please open your terminal. To make sure that it is running, you can type node. So you'll be able to see that Node.js is running. If not, you can look at the help instructions and see how to install properly. So once you're done, you can move to your application or the directory of the experiment. I'm gonna exit. Okay, so once you are here, you can test npm. You should be able to see all these functions and help functions coming out. If not, you have not installed Node.js and npm properly. So Node.js requires you to have the JSON package or the package.json file, which is like a notebook or metadata for your application. So we can type npm init to initialize the package name. So this is what your experiment is going to be called. So this is jsPsych tutorial. Cannot contain capital letter. So jsPsych tutorial version. You can leave it. We can just leave everything blank for now. So once you have done that, it's going to initialize this package.json file, which contains just some basic information about the application on the web. The next thing we have to do is to modify the folders a little bit, because we have to, it's a standard procedure or common practice that we have different folders for different specific types of files. So we have the public folder, which is what we are going to show on the front end. So we call it public. Let's move out. And inside that public folder, it's going to contain our CSS file, any other files, and the non-JS jsPsych JavaScript files. And there's going to be another folder called views. So this views is actually the HTML page. This is where our index.html goes in. Public views. And we have, it's common practice to name your JavaScript directory as source. So that's where all your JavaScript files for the experiment is going to be held. So right now it's just experiment. And the utils, it's going to be another folder called scripts. So it's because maybe you want to create some custom scripts that is going to be used in both the backend and the front end. So these are called modules. So we're going to create another folder. Scripts. And I'm going to move it out of the JS. So utils should be in scripts. And your CSS and images are your frontline code, so they should be in public. So right now we have JS, we have public, we have scripts. So we haven't really told our index.html to start the experiment, so we have to tell it start the XP. So it's gonna take the functions which is located in source experiment. It's gonna take this whole function here and start the experiment. So once that is done, we can test it to make sure it's running. Okay, and just type. So everything looks complete. We have the data for the first screen, data for the second screen. So the next thing we have to do is to create a JavaScript file called app. Some people call it index. Some people have different names for that. So we can call it app.js. Some people call it index. You can call it app.js. So this is where we are going to create our backend file. So we have to import a few packages to run that. First, we have to import Express. So Express is a lightweight web framework for running Node.js. So we haven't really installed that yet, but let me just import the package first. Require. So you will import packages, or they call it modules, using require. So this is the name of the module. How you will install module in Node.js is npm install. If you use save, it's gonna save inside your folder here. Then install Express. Remember that it has to be inside that folder that you're working on, the whole experiment or whole project you're working on. If not, it wouldn't work. So once it's installed, there will be a new folder here called node_modules. This is where the packages are going to be stored. And the next update you will see is package.json. And you see that this whole experiment or this whole package or app requires this package called Express. So the next thing we have to install is a module called NodeMon. So this is gonna, NodeMon is a tool that allows you to restart your server every time you make changes to your code. So we can actually run the code without NodeMon. We just have to keep running all the time. But with NodeMon, you can refresh the screen and your app still gets updated every time you edit the app. So we want these to run globally for all future experiments that you create. So we can do that. npm install space -g. G stands for global, NodeMon. Okay. So that you see that it's not included in our dependencies because this app doesn't require NodeMon to run. We are only running it as a container to test our experiment, or I can say test our application. So once that is done, we have required express, and then we are going to create a variable called express app. This tells it that we're going to put into an express framework, and then in that framework we need a server. App.listen 3000 is the port, and the function is console.log. Let's listening to port. So we're going to connect to a port called 3000. So that's a server.address. So we have to give the server address .port. So, okay. So we can test if it's running. Node, if you want to test whether your app is running right now, node app.js. Throw error, cannot find module JS tutorial app.js. Oops, so my app is in source, so I have to move it out. So let me test again. So this is just to test whether your app is running. So once the server starts, it's going to console log. But actually, we might just to make sure that it is running properly. So we're going to call this node modules and instantiate the app. So this is actually to start the server. Start the server. So the next thing we have to do is to set the directories and all this in the intermediate steps. We can call it static middleware. And what we do is app.use express.static. So we're going to serve the static page. And it's double underscore their name class, the directory that you want to serve or to connect, public. Okay, let me check if I've done it correctly. Okay, so we're going to connect to the public directory. And then we also have to connect to our JS directory and our script directory. Scripts, public JS scripts. So now that we have that set up, we want to set where the view location is. So our static pages. Set up, serving static HTML. So we want to know where to get our HTML files. Set. Looks a little bit wrong, but it looks correct. Let me check. App.set. Okay, it looks correct. Views. So it's gonna look, set the views, and where this is the name as. Always remember to put a slash for node.js public / views. And then close it. So this is a views page. And the next thing we have to do is to set app.engine. So it's gonna get the HTML template. HTML. The template we're gonna get is to require EJS. .render file. So we don't have EJS yet, so we have to install EJS. So let's quit. Control C to exit the app. npm install /save EJS. And then app.set. So to set this location, view engine, comma, HTML. Okay. Excuse me. Now we have to route it to where the file is. So we need to get a starting page or landing page. You can call it landing page if you want. Routing. So we need to get slash function. There's a request and a response. So it's how it's written. Request response, and we are gonna get response or render. So this is the index file that we have in views, index.html. So let's say you have multiple pages, you can also retrieve those pages using app.get. So you can get different pages out. So this will be the landing page once the experiment starts. So we can start testing out by typing node app.js. So there's an error, app.eng. Let's try that again. Listening to port 3000. The thing is, we still don't have the app can run. It's running at the backend. To call it out, we can. I think it's localhost. I think it's 3000. 3000. So there's an error. Failed to load server with status. JSPysch is not defined. Let's start experiment. JS173. looks like we okay. So this is our HTML file. Go back one, it's in views. Go back, we're in views. Go back one, we are in public. Source experiment. Go back one, we are in JS. Home folder, jsPsych. Everything looks okay. So I'm not sure why it's not running. Oops, yep, there we go. Function is /js, comma, this, /js, just /js /scripts. Let's reload. There we go. Now we have it. Everything looks good. Warning is no, we don't have to bother about warnings. Everything looks okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Contact experiment. Everything's done. Looks okay. So now we have really set up the experiment as a Node.js format. So we have the backend here, which is where we're going to run other stuff like getting the keys from the environment, setting secret keys, access code API keys to connect with Google Cloud, to connect with Amazon, to connect with a database, to connect with Dropbox, if you're going to save your files in these databases or resources. So that's the end of this tutorial. We will look more in detail about what else we can do with the Node.js format in our next few tutorials. Thank you for watching.